It is Tuesday evening, which means one thing and one thing only. It is another edition of the Fantasy Cheat Sheet here on the Going for Two Live Network. Please go like, subscribe, and comment on the YouTube channel, wherever you're at. Twitch, YouTube, I don't care. Just go ahead and do it. We are ready to talk about week 14, the upcoming, what happened in some of week 13. But let's get into the cast who we got here today. We have a special guest who we'll get to in a second. But we got Jordan. Jordan, what are you up to this week, my man?
Nothing too much, man. Just another week being able to talk some fantasy with you guys. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, yeah, just another week. And we also got the at TFS Doc helping us out this week, the injury analyst at Going for Two, the co-host for the 2-point conversion on the Monday Night Football preview show. James, what is up, my man?
Hey guys, good to be here. I'm pulling double duty on Going for Two this week, but I'm really happy to be here with you guys. I've watched the show for a while. I'm a big fan, and now I get to be here and connect with a different audience. So I'm really excited.
Yeah, and we appreciate you coming on and helping out. So let's just get right into the show. We'll get into the news right away with the doc here. It helps out with some of the news because there has been some injury news. Let's just get right into it. Jimmy G, broken foot on Thursday, and I think the 8th snap of the game. Today they said he's not going to have surgery, but he's still going to be out for a while. I'm just going to throw it straight to you, Doc. Why don't you give us what you know?
Yeah, so things have kind of changed since yesterday. We talked about Jimmy G, and it was a really short conversation. It was broken foot, out for the year, like that's it. And it turns out today that it may not be it. So what they were concerned about, and anytime you have a broken foot, there's an injury. I'm sure if you've been playing fantasy football for any length of time, you know about the Liz Frank injury and how that basically knocks you out for the year. Won't get into details about what that's about, but it's bad. And it turns out that he doesn't have that. He doesn't actually need surgery. And he could be back in about 6 weeks or so. And if he's back in 6 weeks, if you do the math and the 49ers are still alive in the playoffs, that could put him under center for a really important playoff game for them. So this is actually really good news for the Niners. So, you know, it's wheels up for them. And if they can just kind of steady the ship and keep it kind of, you know, upright, then I think they can still make some serious noise. And the Super Bowl hopes have not been completely dashed.
Yeah, for sure. While Jordan's away for a quick sec, what do you personally think this does? Do you think on the fantasy side, do you think this is wheels up for Debo and McCaffrey, or is this wheels up for other players on the team?
Well, I think it's going to be it's hard to say because we haven't really seen much of Brock Purdy. Yep. Jimmy G's would-be successor. So we don't really know what to expect. It is a bit of a wild card, but I think the 49ers all year, they've been relying on their defense, and they're going to continue to do that. And I think they're just going to take the old, you know, formula that a lot of really, really good defensive teams, I think of like the 2000 Baltimore Ravens as one, where they had an excellent defense and they had Trent Dilfer as a quarterback. And they just basically said, try not to get in the way. You know, try not to turn the ball over. You don't have to do too much. Just hand the ball off, throw some short passes, convert a couple of third downs, and don't turn the ball over. And the defense will take care of the rest. And I think that's probably what the 49ers are going to lean on. But we could get surprised. You know, Mike White looks like the second coming of, you know, Kurt Warner at times. So, you know, you never know when one of these guys gets in and he's untested. But if I had to hazard a guess, I would say it's probably going to be a general downgrade, but not a killer for the offense. And even if you think about it briefly, the defense is so good at creating turnovers. They can get turnovers in the red zone, and they can still score some points that way. So I think that's, you know, going to be the game plan. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, Jordan, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I agree. Brock Purdy obviously isn't Patrick Mahomes or anything, so I would expect them to kind of lean more on the more short passes. You saw a lot of Christian McCaffrey last week. I expect that to continue. It just makes it harder to trust any of the other guys on the offense from a fantasy standpoint. You never know who is going to be out of it. It was hard to trust Kittle and sometimes even Debo with Jimmy. So with this, it'll be even harder. It'll be one guy 1 week, another guy another week. You just have to guess. It's like picking straws, I guess, to see who will have those blow up games. But like you said, Doc, their defense is so good. I don't think it'll really affect them that much in terms of winning games. I think they can still win low-scoring games if they have to. But from a fantasy perspective, it has me wondering about everybody else except for Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, and I got a competitive league with CMC and Debo on the team, and like after you already know the trade I made to get Debo, so I'm happy I still have Debo because I still won the trade. But having both of them with all this going on at the end of the year is not very good. Let's get into another injury. This one I can't stand because I have a super flex dynasty league that I have Jimmy G and this other quarterback, and that was not good. Let's just get into it. Baltimore Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson sprained PCL. Doc, I saw they said possibly 3 to 4 weeks, but what do you think?
Yeah, so this is really unfortunate. And I have Lamar Jackson in a couple of leagues too, and this is the second year in a row that he's kind of gotten hurt and had a leg injury at like the worst possible time. It's like it's coming down the stretch, must-win games going into the playoffs. Like if you drafted Lamar Jackson, this is why you have Lamar Jackson, so he can go out there in like the semifinal round of the playoffs and drop a 40 burger on somebody and get you to the finals or get you over the hump. And now with this knee injury, the good news is that it's not an ACL. It's not something that's going to knock him out for, the rest of the year or, multiple months or anything like that. And we saw something similar with Ezekiel Elliott. So Ezekiel Elliott had a strained PCL last year, and you saw that he was able to play through it. He had a sprained MCL or medial collateral ligament this year, which is a little bit different. But he was able to play through it. He wasn't as good as he was, but he was able to play. He still finishes an RB1. So it looks like he's going to miss this week. And I think it's reasonable. The time frame that they've given with this is, 1 to 3 weeks. I think that's a reasonable time frame. I think it's going to be more like, what do the Ravens need? How are they looking? Or do they have the opportunity to rest some guys? Or is it kind of like all hands on deck because we need to make the playoffs type deal? And I think it's just going to be, he's probably going to miss. It looks like he's going to miss this week, and then it's going to be week to week after that. But I don't think all hope is lost. If you've got a first round bye, I think it could be a situation where he is back for week 16 for your semifinal matchup. And then the question is going to be, do you run him out there, or do you have another option because you want to, play it safer? But that's, down the road. But that's where I think we are with Lamar. So it's not great news, but it's not as bad as it could have been. And that's, how we can take it.
Well, that's at least I was afraid you were going to give me the worst of the worst. But Jordan, while we're on the topic of Lamar, is it Tyler Huntley's season or is it stay away?
So he didn't look great in the time that he had this past Sunday. But, a guy getting thrusted in, not really game plan as the starter. So, you could expect him to not be as sharp as one would like. But I will say, we can look back to the games that he started last year when Lamar was out. Mark Andrews, boy.
That's where I was hoping you were going.
I think it's Mark Andrews' season. I'm hoping it's Mark Andrews' season to kind of close out the fantasy playoffs. I think, like Doc was saying, I definitely think Lamar is out this week. Now, if they lose this game this week, I think no matter what, he'll probably be back in week 15. They still have a chance to win the division. They're battling with Cincinnati on that, so I think they want to do that. They want to have a shot at hosting a playoff game and stuff like that. So it all depends on how they perform. If they win, I think they'll feel more relaxed to bring him back along slowly. But if they lose, I think he might feel a little more pressure to come back.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And that's, if you didn't mention it, that's pretty much the only thing I wanted to bring up was Mark Andrews' season, I hope.
Yes.
Now that we've talked about those two major injuries, non-injury related news, but big out of the NFL today, and I don't think it's a coincidence it happened this week. John Robinson, GM of the Tennessee Titans, happens to be fired directly after the week he loses to A.J. Brown, who he traded for technically Treylon Burks. Not saying that Treylon Burks is not a good player, but it's A.J. Brown, and he showed why he's A.J. Brown. Jordan, start off with you. You surprised it happened now? Because I am. Are you surprised it happened at all? What do you got?
I'm surprised that it happened this season, honestly. At the time, I didn't really hear people. That sucks, Jamie, man. That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Lamar cost me in the league as well. But I think I didn't think the AJ Brown trade was that crazy. I mean, you didn't want to pay the guy. I mean, I would have kept him, but I mean, I wasn't the GM. But I can understand from another standpoint of not wanting to pay the receiver. And then you saw Kansas City trade their receiver. You saw uh, the Packers, my team, trade their star receiver. So it kind of made sense if you wanted to try to avoid it. I mean, Ryan Tannehill was your quarterback anyway, so it's one of those things where you feel like you can get production elsewhere and for cheaper prices, and that's what they did. It remains to be seen if it has panned out or if it didn't yet. I mean, Traylon Burke is still a rookie, so and he's shown flashes. He's just hard for him to stay on the field. But yeah, it was a surprise that they let him go this quickly.
Yeah, Doc, what you got?
I'm a little surprised by it, to be honest with you. I mean, Tennessee's doing well. They're leading that division. They're currently the 4 seed in the AFC. It's like, all right, well, I mean, you traded a marquee player, and it's not like the Eagles haven't been beating up on other teams in the league either.
Right.
So I wouldn't be surprised if it comes out later that there was something else going on, some other internal discord or these things come out, sometimes years later that, he's beefing with, some other executive or the coach and him were getting into it behind the scenes, or there was some player personnel issues or something. And that was what it was really about. But it is, I do agree with you that the timing it raises some eyebrows. It's curious. I don't know if we know the whole story. I don't know if we're going to know the whole story for a while, but it is curious.
So you kind of brought it up. I personally think this is a Vrabel versus John Robinson issue. I don't know why, but I just have this feeling. We saw everyone has seen the video of Vrabel when they announced the trade. Like, what? Like, I just have a feeling this is a Vrabel versus John Robinson thing. The reason I am the most shocked is because what you said, Doc, and that is 4th place in the AFC. They are winning that division. I know the division's not great, but we've all seen it where all you have to do is get into the tournament. And who knows what happens after that. Once you get into the tourney, put all the cards into the basket. We've seen teams that you think are going to stink in the tourney, and they go all the way. You see 6 seeds or 6 or 7 seeds win it. I know I say 6 because for those that don't remember, there was a time when there was only 6 seeds and not 7 in the playoffs. I mean, surprising. But the other big piece of news today, and this is the one I really want to get into real quick before we get into the meat and potatoes of the show. Baker Mayfield, I thought the news was going to be Baker Mayfield just waived by the Carolina Panthers yesterday, and I thought that was going to be the news. And then I thought there was a slight chance I would be coming on saying the 49ers picked them up. I just thought there was a slight chance. But no, the Los Angeles Rams have claimed Baker Mayfield. So Baker Mayfield is now a Ram. There is a slight chance that he starts on Thursday. Don't know for sure. Before I ask Doc my question, because I want to get into this, I have something I want to bring up. Jordan, what do you think about this? What do you think about the future for Baker in LA? However you want to spin this, because in my way, I'm going to spin this big time in a second. So Jordan, go for it.
I think one of the happiest players right now is Christian McCaffrey. When he heard that Baker might get signed by the 49ers, he was like, "Oh, I just thought I got away from this guy." But for the Rams, I mean, I think it was a guy who has pedigree and he's cheap. It's a low risk. You pick him up. I mean, he's better than Bryce Perkins and John Wolford. You would like to think. So you bring him in. Stafford is, I don't know what his long-term health is going to look like. I mean, he has the concussions. He had the elbow. He had those things like that. So they're trying to, I guess, hedge for the future a little bit. They have the talent around to win now, so they didn't want to start from scratch, I guess. So he could come in and be a game manager. He's shown he can do that with Cleveland and when everything else is good around him. And I think the Rams have built up a pretty good team around the quarterback to where he could kind of slide in and help them next year if they need him to. But I think now that this is going to be a tryout for him to see what he has for the rest of the season, and if it all works out, he could be Stafford's backup until Stafford inevitably gets hurt or he decides to retire in offseason.
All right, so this is where I want to take over. This is what I think, and here's the medical question. And then I'll ask the question, and then you think about it, James, and I'll keep going with my take.
Okay.
What biggest thing that got me with Stafford was the announcement that it was a spinal cord contusion. That is why he is out. His wife was sick with her. I forget what she had, but she had cancer. She was, he's been in the league forever. It's not like he's a 5-year vet. He's a 10, 12, 13-year vet. He got his Super Bowl last year. He needs to freaking retire, in my opinion. And this is the reason I think this is the hedge the bet future is the Rams don't have much money on the cap. They have no picks because they've traded picks for the past 4 to 5, 6, 7,000 decades in a row. They don't have the draft capital to go get someone in the draft, like even if it's a mid-level Anthony Richardson or even anyone, like even a Hainer from Fresno State. They don't even have the draft capital to go get anyone. And even the guys they could get are going to be developmental. You need a bridge quarterback. Personally, what I think he is a bridge next year. I think Baker Mayfield, bold take, Baker Mayfield could start next year because with the spinal contusion and everything else and the concussions, to me, it is absolutely ridiculous if Matthew Stafford comes back next year. I can't believe I'm saying this, and even people at my work are saying this to me when I mentioned it. Football is not life. Life is more important than football in this case. James, what do you got?
What do you think? I couldn't agree more. I think you really have some good perspective there. And I think it's important to acknowledge that, the type of injury that Matthew Stafford has, like, you say, bruise. It's like, well, bruise it depends on where it is. If it's, in your thigh muscle, that's one thing. If it's in your spinal cord, that's the kind of injury that people get when they get into car accidents or they fall off of buildings. Like, this is a very, very serious injury. And the fact that he was having symptoms is really concerning. So, these can result in paralysis and death. I see it in my practice where people come in and they have a spinal cord injury, like, just the same type that Matthew Stafford has, just in a little bit of a different location. And they're paralyzed from the neck down. And, it's really bad stuff. So the fact that this is happening and this is what he's dealing with, I think there's a non-zero chance that he does retire. And it may even be more than a 50-50 chance that he retires in the offseason, despite what Coach McVay said. I mean, what else is he supposed to say? It's like they have a season to get through. And the thing that I really love about the Baker Mayfield signing is, as fantasy football players, like, this reminds me of a move. Like, the Rams are like the dynasty team that goes for it every year by trading away their picks. And then, they went for it. They won the championship. But they know that the wheels are going to fall off at some point. But they're like, oh, we've been getting away with it for 6 or 7 years, and they've been good, and they've been beating up on other teams in the league. And now the wheels fell off. And so it's like they're that team that they're scraping the bottom of the barrel. And it's like when one of these backup quarterbacks, like if they're a super flex team, a backup quarterback hits the waiver wire, it's like, yeah, I'll throw $20 a fab on that. Come on over. We'll throw you in the second super flex spot and see what you got. Why not? So that was basically the move, and that's what they did. And, I respect it. But I think you hit the nail on the head, Mike. Like, I think that is their plan. And they're basically like, well, we need a backup plan. Somebody's got, when the center snaps the ball, somebody's got to be there to get it and throw it. And, Baker Mayfield, for all his stock is in the toilet, but he is a former number 1 overall pick. He has performed in the past. It's been dicey for this year has been not great, to put it very mildly. So it's a way for both of them to help each other. Like, the Rams get a quarterback, they can walk and chew gum and throw the football at the same time. And Baker Mayfield gets to rehab his image and build up his capital, and everybody wins. So, but I think you nailed it. I think it's a perfect analysis.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, to me, it'd be crazy for him to keep going. But hey, problem with NFL players sometimes is their ego. And we're going to get to a player that has a major ego in a sec, because he is the quarterback of a certain team. We're not going to get in. I'm not going to exactly go why, but last night, Tampa Bay Buccaneers 17, Saints 16. But we all know that score was a little would you say, risky? Because, hey, for the first 3 quarters of that game, it was not that great of a game to watch. I was watching the whole thing. It wasn't very entertaining, but of course, in the fourth quarter, it became entertaining. But like we do here on the Fantasy Cheat Sheet, we always give our biggest takeaway or something that we like about the game. Jordan, why don't you go first, my man?
So, man, I'm kind of torn with this because in one league, I have both Rashad White and Leonard Fournette on the same team. And it was all good, when White was just a handcuff and I could just have him on my bench just in case Fournette got hurt. But obviously, as the season has progressed, White has started to eat into Fournette's work more and more and more. Then the injury last week gave him his opportunity. He took advantage of it. Fournette still saw more snaps than White last night, but White ended up out touching him by one. He scored the touchdown. He also fumbled and dropped the key pass as well. But it's official now that it's going to be like a full-blown split, I believe, much more than it was earlier in the season. Tom Brady seems to like White more now than he did at the beginning of the year. He trusts him. He wanted him in late in the game. So that just makes it confusing. Not many people probably have both of them on the team, so it's not really a decision they'll have to make. But for me, it's going to be confusing down the stretch. I think, they'll both be provide at least flex value, sometimes RB2 numbers. I don't think either one of them can produce RB1 numbers if they're splitting as much as they were. So it'll just be something that you got to kind of navigate through week by week for the rest of the season. Hot hand approach is things I hate to hear as a fantasy manager, but that's what they're going with. And right now, White is the hot hand.
Yeah, what do you think about this situation, James?
Yeah, I think it's actually an interesting situation for fantasy because I think it gets you in a position where if you have either one of those guys, it's like they're serviceable. They're probably not going to go out and win you the week, but it's another buy-mageddon. The NFL continues to prove that they hate fantasy football because they make one of the biggest bye weeks, week 14. But that's a whole nother stream podcast. But guys, Rashad White or Leonard Fournette, if you have them, you may be in a position where you need to start them. I think the real value comes from if one of them gets injured and you happen to be holding the other card. It's like there was a story. I'm not going to take too much time, but there was a story about this guy who had two really valuable stamps. So what did he do? He set one of them on fire and burned it. So then he had the last valuable stamp. And since there was only one, it was exponentially more valuable than both of them put together. So I know that's a long stretch of an analogy, but same process. When one of these guys gets hurt and you happen to be holding the other stamp, as it were, that's going to be really valuable. And that's a guy that can help get you over the hump. So it's not ideal, but given the position that they're in the offense and given the fact that they've shown what they can do, I have confidence that if either one of them were to get the lion's share of that job or take the job for themselves for whatever reason, the other player is not available, I think they could be really valuable.
So I'm not a coach. I'm not Todd Bowles or Byron Leftwich. But there's something telling me that this is phasing out Uncle Lenny. There's just something that's telling me that this is Rashad White's job to take. And eventually by the end of the year, it will be Rashad White's. I think Tom likes him. I think even if Lenny starts the game, I have a feeling that Rashad's going to be the one to take over the game at the end. And, Lenny might be the guy who just gets the ball rolling. But
maybe
like we all know, Tom Brady is the key to this team. Tom Brady is going to put the guys on the field the guys that are on the field are going to be guys that he likes. But we all know Tom Brady's the man, and the doc wants to talk about the man. So go ahead, Doc.
Yeah. So real quick about that. So one thing I want to add to that is Tom Brady advocated for Uncle Lenny in the past. Like he was the one that lobbied to get him on the team. So there's definitely I think he likes both of them. But the other thing, you may have a point in the sense with Tampa Bay, what they do like to do is they like to kind of give Uncle Lenny a little bit of a rest down the stretch, and then he becomes playoff Lenny. And they did that in their Super Bowl run, and they rode him into the ground and to a championship. So they may very well, kind of parse things out 50-50 or 55-45 in favor of Rachaad White because they want to, get the guy who's younger, fresh legs, and save some wear and tear.
We know they will be there when it gets time to get down and dirty.
And then they go, the playoffs roll around, which doesn't help us for fantasy purposes, but I think you may be onto something there. So it's interesting with Tom Brady that you mentioned his ego. We'll get to that in a second, but one of the takeaways, the big takeaway that I had is that, the term GOAT, like the greatest of all time, like that gets thrown around a lot. And the thing is, like, this is a game that really didn't have a lot of fanfare. And we talked about it on the Monday night show. It was like the winner of that game probably was in the driver's seat to go to the playoffs. And nobody really cared. It was just like, it was a regular game. It's like, this game has playoff implications. This is an important game. And Tampa Bay's not doing so well. They lose in overtime. It was like the first time that Tom Brady lost, when he was leading in the fourth quarter, like in his entire career, and they lose to the Browns. No disrespect to the Browns, but it's like you figure that Tom Brady's going to find a way to win that game. They lose. They got to win this game. And they're losing at, just like you said, third quarter. They look like garbage. And he finds a way to come back and win the game with Cade Otton and Rachaad White. And, Mike Evans didn't bail him out. Like, Chris Godwin didn't do a whole lot. Like, everybody did their part. And that's what he does. And I will be completely honest. I was team Joe Montana is the greatest of all time until the Atlanta-New England Super Bowl. And when he won that game, I was like, okay, like, I got to put this Joe Montana stuff. Joe Montana was my guy. I was like, Joe Cool, 4-0 in the Super Bowl. Like, that's John Candy in the first row. Let's go win the Super Bowl. Like, legend stuff. And I was like, okay, like, Tom Brady is the greatest of all time. He's the greatest I've ever seen. And he just keeps adding to his resume. So the other thing I want to bring up is that I got to be honest with you. I don't think it's ego. I don't think he's sticking around because it's ego. And the reason I say that is I read a book this year. Actually, I should say I listened to it. So all you guys out there, I don't have time to read a book, audiobooks. That's where it's at. I crush a book a week.
Yeah.
And while I'm doing the dishes, I'm listening to audiobooks and great. So there's a book called It's Better to Be Feared by Seth Wickersham. And it's about Belichick and Brady and the whole Patriots dynasty. And it starts in the very beginning when Belichick was an assistant coach with Parcells in the 80s and all the way up to essentially when Tom Brady goes to Tampa Bay. And I won't get into the whole thing, but the one thing that really struck me was the level of competitiveness that Tom Brady has. It's almost pathological. And Belichick is the same way, which is why they were so perfect together, even though they were kind of crazy and they made the whole place crazy, but they kept winning because they were just that competitive. And if you think about Tom Brady on a personal level, what has he given up in order to continue his career? Talk about like guys that should retire. He's won 7 Super Bowls. He's 45 freaking years old and he's still out there. He got divorced this year from a supermodel, like
over football,
to play football. Like, okay, like, like that's dedication and everything. But I mean, who amongst us would make that sacrifice to say, I want to continue to do this thing when everything is pointing towards I should step away? And here he is. He's not going out on his sword like Brett Favre, that last year where it was just a complete train wreck and he should have retired a year early. They're going to go to the playoffs most likely. And if I'm a team in the NFC, I don't want to play them. I don't want to play Tampa Bay. I don't want to go up against Tom Brady because he might hand it to me again. The GOAT, Tom Brady.
So,
what else can you say?
Doc, me and you have a lot in common on this one. Montana was my guy. Montana will always be. Being on the West Coast, being in California, and being a Chiefs fan, that has part of it. But even not being a Chiefs fan, I've been out here. It's all about Montana being the man. And that exact same game is the exact, like, Atlanta, New England was the day that I told everyone that I knew, yep, this guy that I used to make fun of, couldn't stand, love to cheer against, was the GOAT. And he's proving why he is the GOAT. I was watching the game, and as soon as they got the ball back, I go, here we go. Like, I knew it. Like, I'm like, here, it's either going to go to they're going to do something. Like you said, he is. I mean, he's probably one of the most ultra competitive that we know. He's more competitive than certain quarterbacks that think they're competitive. Yes, I'm talking about your quarterback, Jordan.
I knew that.
But more importantly, this is scaring the living daylights out of me because Minnesota almost lost to the Jets. And I'm not saying that Minnesota is not a good team. I'm just saying they're beatable. The Cowboys could cowboy it.
At any time.
At any time. The Eagles are good. The Eagles could be great. Not denying that. The Niners just got the blow of Jimmy G being out like we just talked about. There's just something telling me that he's going to be there towards the end, and it drives me absolutely nuts because this team is not good enough to be there, but he will them to be in the hunt at the end. Jordan, what do you got?
So I will say I agree with most of what Doc said. The only thing is they don't scare me as much as they used to, only because the offense isn't scoring as many points and the defense isn't as good either. So if he's going to score 17 points in the playoffs against the Cowboys or the Eagles, they're going to lose because their defense is not going to be able to stop those guys either. Now, if he starts to put it together, score 24, 27, then I'm like, okay, then I'll concede. But as of now, it's been a struggle for them to score. They're like almost last in the league in points per game on offense, and that's been like all season. So they haven't kicked it into gear yet. I don't think that they will. I just think it's been a weird season for them and for him in particular.
Sure.
But I do think, if he's going up against Kirk Cousins in a playoff game, I'm definitely putting my money on him. But I don't think they have enough to beat the really good teams in the NFC, like the Cowboys or the Eagles.
Talent-wise, I think you're right. It makes me think of the way to beat Tom, because he has lost. And the way to beat Tom Brady is you have to be aggressive against him. And because he's so good, he kind of, gets teams to kind of play it safe. They keep it close. It's just what he did last night. That's his blueprint in order to beat teams. Kind of they're hanging around, we got these guys. And then he turns it on and whatever. When you look at the Eagles, when they won in the Super Bowl, what did they do that was different from other teams that lost? They stayed aggressive. They're going for it on fourth down. Philly, all that stuff. They're like, if we're going to lose these guys, we're going to lose by being aggressive. We're not going to take field goals when we could score touchdowns. And if we lose, we lose. But if we kick field goals, we're probably going to lose anyway. So they went for it. It worked out and they won. But if you don't do that against him, like we saw last night, many more times than not, he finds a way to beat you.
Yeah, for sure. So when we were younger, when we were kids, we probably all played had a book that was called Where's Waldo? And we looked for Waldo in every freaking page. I want to make a book right now in New Orleans that's called Where's Alvin? Because where the heck is Alvin Kamara when I need him on my damn team? I'm telling you right now, this is really frustrating. 12 carries for 26 yards last night. 2.2 yards per carry. Last time I checked, that's not very good, Jordan and Doc. Here's the problem. 7 carries the game before. 12 carries for 42 in week 11 against the Rams. 8 for 26 against Pitt. 9 for 30 against Baltimore. 18 for 62 against the Raiders. That's only 3.4. He's not the Alvin Kamara that we are used to. It's the offense. Dennis Allen needs to get his head out of his rear end and get this guy the ball more. And what's funny is I'm passionate about this one, and this isn't even my rant of the night. So this just shows you I do not understand. I get it. They got to love it on the outside. They're having Andy Dalton, not Jameis Winston. That's a whole other story at quarterback. But they need to figure this out because if you keep doing this, you're going to ruin Alvin Kamara's career in fantasy. And I do not appreciate or like it. Doc, what do you think?
Well, it's interesting because I know he's been running bad, to say the least. But I looked at his stats and it's like in the beginning of the year, he had a rib injury. And then, from weeks 5 to 8, it was like, okay, 25 points, 18 points, 17 points, 42 points, PPR points.
Yeah.
He's back. And then exactly what you said, just kind of all of a sudden against Baltimore, single digits. He cracked double digits a couple of times, but it hasn't been there. He hasn't been getting the touches. I don't know. I don't know if there's some injury that he's playing through. Like the rib injury has been acting up. He had the whole court, thing where, he potentially could have gotten suspended. That seems like that's off the table for now, but I don't know how much that was affecting him, but something is going on there. And again, with these things, sometimes we don't find out until after the season. And then, it's like, we'll find out in February. It's like Alvin Kamara goes for surgery for something. And it's like, well, that would have been nice to know that was bothering him for 2 months, but they didn't disclose it for whatever reason. So it's all speculation, obviously, but I agree with you that something is not right, because this is not the Alvin Kamara that we're used to. And we don't have, and it always bothers me when this happens. We have a 27-year-old guy, but there's no proximate cause. There's no thing we can put our finger on. And I think just as human beings and as fantasy football players, it's like when things don't make sense, like, I don't know about you guys, but that bothers me.
Yeah.
If I can't make the pieces of the puzzle fit, and I can't right now. So I'm open to hear more, and I'm curious to hear more about what comes of it. But for right now, I think if you've gotten this far with him, I think you have to continue to ride him because the potential is there, but the level of confidence is way down.
So Jordan, you're a Packer fan, but you live down in that area. What are you hearing? What are you thinking?
Man, I hear a lot of people want Jameis. Want Jameis back under center. Andy Dalton, I think when he had the 3 touchdown game a couple of weeks ago, that saved him. That bought him more equity to start a few more games. But I think, after this performance, they might have to reevaluate it. And not just for our fantasy purposes, but just, they technically still have a chance to win this division, I think. So, Jameis gives them, I think, a better chance at this point. I mean, and from a fantasy perspective for Kamara, it's just it's been frustrating with him since Drew Brees left. Honestly, I mean, last year he performed well, but there were a lot of games where he let you down. And I know Sean Payton isn't there, so it kind of changes the offense a little bit. But it's no way he should be having the production that he's had the last couple of weeks. It's ridiculous. I think getting Jameis back out there would help him. It would help Olave. It would help the receiving core in general. I don't know. It's been, I don't have any shares of Kamara, so I'm happy about that. But like Doc said, I mean, I would be if they kept Dalton for the rest of the season in the playoffs, I would be scared to roll him out there. I know the potential is there, but he could also give you a dud as well that could cost you a championship.
Yeah, and speaking of duds, speaking of getting bad scores, Jordan, what's your regret of the week, my dude? I know you got one.
I always have one. However, last week I will say was a really good fantasy week for me. But that didn't stop me from making dumb decisions. So I won. I won the matchup. However, it was like by less than 3 points. I won by, and I had been battling all day between Zonovan Knight and it was, I had like 3 guys. It was Zonovan Knight, Cordero Patterson, and Jeff Wilson. So needless to say, I started Jeff Wilson and Cordero Patterson. And Jeff Wilson gave me 0.3, I believe, and Cordero Patterson gave me 6. And in this league, Zonovan Knight gave me 15. Now, this is a pirate league that I'm in, so obviously, if you win, you get to take the best player off of the other guy's team or whatever. So I go into the Sunday night game. This guy has 1 player left. I'm only up by less than a point. Now, the scores must have got adjusted out there. But anyway, going into Sunday night, I'm up by less than a point, and he has Deion Jackson playing. So needless to say, I watched that whole game waiting to see if Deion Jackson would do anything. I thought when Dallas kept scoring touchdowns, I'm like, damn. I'm like, no, they're going to give the garbage time yards to him. But then when I saw Zach Moss come in, I'm like, yes. So basically, Deion Jackson finished with 6 yards, so it was less than a point, and I ended up getting the win. But that Zonovan Knight, like if he would have got like 5 more yards, I would have lost, and I'd have kicked myself for not playing Zonovan Knight over Cordero Patterson for sure.
All right, Doc, what is I know you're guesting on the show, but you came through. doing what we do. So what do you got?
Well, this one doesn't hurt that bad because, process over results. And so what I did was I had Josh Palmer and I had Cortland Sutton as my wide receiver 3. And it's like, which guy am I going to go with? And the thing about Cortland Sutton is I've had Cortland Sutton on the team for 2 years, a dynasty team. And I've had Josh Palmer for the same time. I drafted him. I traded to get the draft pick to get Josh Palmer because I had Keenan Allen on the team and because I know about the injury risk with him and with Mike Williams. So Josh Palmer has been like, it's been like a little birdie in the nest that now it's like I raised him and fed him and now he's flying. And it's like, I really feel close to that. I was like, Josh Palmer's been my guy this year. Like he's really helped me out a lot. When things have been down and I've needed a guy, like he's got me double-digit games. He scored 30 points against Kansas City a couple of weeks ago. Like he's been my dude. And I saw the matchup with Cortland Sutton, and it's like Judy's hurt, and Dolchich hasn't been doing that well, and I'm going to run him out there. And yeah, he gets hurt, so that doesn't help. Players get hurt, I get it. But leaving my dog on the bench and rolling with the siren song of Cortland Sutton, and it, once again, with the Broncos, steered me right into the rocks. And I lost the matchup. Cortland Sutton got me a big fat 0, and Josh Palmer scored 13, and I lost by 12.6. So loyalty is a big thing for me, and I won't make that mistake again. So Josh, if you're watching, I'm sorry. I won't make that mistake again. I won't lose faith in you ever again.
So I said this last week, Doc, but I think this will ring true again this week for you. Any player whose quarterback's catchphrase is "Let's ride," I'm not playing them ever again. Next year is when I'll start playing those guys again, but I can't do it no more for the rest of this season.
It's a good lesson.
I'm going to give a little backstory for Doc and to remind you, Jordan, but we're not done with Let's Ride. I'm just going to say that. So here's So, Jordan, remember that league I told you? It's a spinoff of my Dynasty League. It's a redraft, but it ended up being a 2-week playoff thing, and the playoffs already started.
Yep.
So, Doc, the playoff, my buddy wanted to try something new. Every 2 years, we try something different.
Okay.
So, the playoffs it's eight teams in the playoffs out of 12. So, the playoffs are 12 and 13 is round 1. 14 and 15 is the semis, and then 16, 17 is the final. So, this week is the last, and it's a little bit IDP. That's the key.
Okay.
The thing is, going after week 12, I beat the guy last week. I was up by like a point going into this week's games. So this week was pretty much an even thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where it gets haywire, boys. Because I did win the matchup.
Okay.
But last night, I was sweating it because he had Tyrann Mathieu, and I was done. Okay? I won by 0.46.
Wow.
Another half tackle, I would have lost.
Wow.
But here's the problem, and this is where we get into the matchups would have – if I would have done what I should have done, I would have not had to worry.
Mm-hmm.
One – my dumbass shouldn't have used the sentiment that some people get stuck in superflex leagues of you have to play a quarterback at your superflex position. Because I picked up a guy named Kyle frickin' Allen.
Oof. Wow.
Okay. But at my flex, I played Cortland Sutton. But that morning, I thought about starting Alec Pierce, and I kept Alec Pierce on the bench. I mean,
I understand.
But I should have played Alec Pierce over Kyle Allen.
That I get it.
So the amount of stress that I had yesterday trying to not worry about Tyrann Mathieu getting another half tackle for the last 8 minutes of the game took a year off of my freaking life. How
much weight did you lose watching that game?
No, I was stress eating. That was my fault. I gained weight. I mean, that's just how it is. So we've talked about our regrets. Now it's time to just talk about what we want. Jordan, I honestly don't remember what you want to talk about. Go ahead.
So I touched on this a little bit on the Armchair Fantasy Show on Wednesday. What a bold prediction I had. Now, one of the pieces of the bold prediction won't come true, I don't believe. However, I still think it rings true for the rest of the guys. The Jets, with Mike White as a starter, can provide almost league-winning fantasy production for a lot of fantasy managers over the next couple of weeks. I said on Wednesday that I thought Garrett Wilson would finish as a top 12 receiver. Obviously, he made me look good this past week with his production. White threw for 300 yards, a couple of interceptions, but he had a rushing touchdown. You know, the offense just looks so much better. Zonovan Knight looked serviceable. Even Ty Johnson caught several passes. You know, Michael Carter will be coming back, but I think just having White as the quarterback moving forward, I felt like before you couldn't really trust any Jet but Breece Hall before he got hurt. But now you can trust White given the matchup. They have, several easy matchups moving forward. I mean, I know they play the Bills, one of those matchups, but other than that, there are not many tough matchups left. You can trust Elijah Moore. I mean, not Elijah Moore, I'm sorry. Garrett Wilson. I saw a couple of people pick up Corey Davis in several leagues I'm in. You can kind of trust him as well. White is sharing the ball around, making more guys relevant on offense. So, I think we can actually trust Jets even going into the playoffs.
Yeah, Doc, do you agree with Jordan?
I do, and I think it's really impressive. It's really kind of an indictment on Zach Wilson. I haven't completely given up on him just because he's young, he's got the pedigree, and he can move a little bit. But it really says something when you have a guy that essentially was an afterthought for 2 years in a row, and he comes in and completely rejuvenates the offense. Also, parenthetically, in the beginning of the year when Zach Wilson had his knee injury and Joe Flacco came in, he had some pretty good games too. So I thought it was really interesting when he was at the right before his coach benched him, where they said, "Do you think you're the problem?" And he's like, "No, I don't think I'm the problem." And he's basically pointing fingers. What's the old adage? Whenever you point a finger out at someone else, you have three pointing back at yourself. I think Zach Wilson is the living embodiment of that. But it's really nice for the Jets because they had all these young, exciting pieces, and this offense looked really good, and their defense has stepped up. And it's like, football's more fun when the Jets are good. I mean, when they were a doormat, like that was rough, but it's like then when they got talent and they got a young, energetic coach and things looked like they were moving in the right direction and they still kind of stunk, like that was depressing. So the fact that this is all like coming together, like I'm excited for it. So it's like the Jets look like they're going to make the playoffs and I'm here for it. I live in the New York metro area and I know that the Jet fans are starving for some positive, experiences with their football team. And this could be it. And Mike White could be the leader of that. Mike effing White, just like the t-shirt says, it's like they're wearing Mike White shirts. They're not wearing Zach Wilson shirts. So you got to take your hat off to him and you got to give him a lot of credit. And you got to give the coach credit too, because it takes a lot of cojones to sit down the guy that you drafted with the second overall pick for a guy that essentially no one's ever heard of. And they took off like a rocket. So credit to him too, because if that didn't go well, he might be out of a job. So, credit to the whole organization.
I just have one thing to add to this because both of you are right, in my opinion, and both of you have said everything. But I'm just going to say something that I have been saying for 4 or 5 years, and I just love it. And like you said, the NFL is better with the Jets doing good because big teams and big media or whatever. I didn't know how long it was going to be taking the Jets to get out of the goddamn Adam Gase hole, but they're finally doing it, and I love it.
That was a deep, dark hole, too.
That was a very deep hole. Well, Doc, I know there's a certain coach and a certain team you want to discuss. Why don't you go ahead and talk about the Northwest?
Yeah, absolutely. So as an injury analyst, we talked about it a little bit last night on the Monday Night Show, but now I get to expand on it a little bit. One of my favorite things is trying to translate good old Petey Carroll's, medicalese, and try to come up with a diagnosis whenever he gives something because it's poetry. And it keeps me entertained, but it also, lets me use my skills because it's like I have to translate whatever he's saying into something that the rest of the world can like understand that actually has a basis in reality. So this is germane to our discussion of the running backs on Seattle and what's going on there. So let's start at the top. Kenneth Walker leaves the game. Pete Carroll says he jammed his ankle, whatever that means. What it turns out the injury he actually has is an ankle sprain, which you don't have to be a professional athlete to know what an ankle sprain is. The thing that's interesting about the ankle sprain that Kenneth Walker has is it's actually the ligaments on the inside of the ankle. When most people sprain their ankle, the ankle goes in and that strains the ligaments on the outside. So the good news is that the ligaments on the inside are stronger and thicker, and it's more of an unusual injury. So there is a chance that he could play this week, Kenneth Walker. There's also a chance that he could not play this week, which brings us further down the line to DJ Dallas. He would be the next man up, except Pete Carroll said that he was dealing with, and this is a quote, somewhat of a high ankle issue, close quote, which is like having somebody get shot in the chest and calling it, quote, somewhat of a gunshot issue, close quote. So this is really bad. Anybody that has played fantasy football for any length of time knows that a high ankle sprain is bad news. So if DJ Dallas is dealing with a high ankle sprain, like not only are we not going to see him for this week, we're probably not going to see him for like a month. So that's not great. And did you guys lose me?
No, you're good.
Okay, cool.
No, you're good.
And so that brings us to the next man up. We're not done. Yep. Travis Homer. So he missed week 13 with an illness. Oh, and by the way, now he has a knee sprain. So we don't know what's going on there, but what we do know, which is new, is that they signed Wayne Gallman off the street. And that I think is very interesting because if they had a high level of confidence that some or any of those players that I just mentioned were going to be available, I don't think they do that. So it could be Tony Jones starting in a late season matchup for Seattle and getting the lion's share of the carries with Wayne Gallman backing him up. And that would not surprise me either. So that's like a deep, deep cut of a player that could end up, being one of those guys that comes in, gets the opportunity, has a good week, and then, gets relegated to, the wastebasket of history. But Tony Jones has produced in the past for New Orleans, and he might do it again. So just kind of tuck it away, see how the week plays out. But if it's looking like none of these guys are practicing, maybe it's time to pounce. And you could be like Samaje Perine 2.0. Guy goes out there, has a nice game or two, and then, you got to move on. But this is the time to do it. This is the time you need it, especially with all the bye weeks and the injuries.
Yeah, for sure. So I am ready for Mike's rant of the week. And Doc brought it up a little bit at the very beginning of the show. He put it out there for me. Here we go. NFL, I hate you. The NFL, I hate you. And I'm just going to say it. This week, it's the last week before the fantasy playoffs. I want to play Terry McLaurin. I want Terry McLaurin, starter. Brian Robinson, flexor starter. Olave, starter. Alvin Kamara, starter, even though he's not doing very good. Pittman, Jonathan Taylor, not Matt Ryan. Aaron Rodgers, Alan Lazard, Christian Watson, A.J. Dillon, Aaron Jones, not Robert Tonyan. Justin Fields, Cole Kmet, David Montgomery, Cordarrelle Patterson, like you mentioned, Drake London if you got the damn ball. Guess what? We can't play those guys because it's this freaking apocalyptical freaking bullshit of playing 6 teams on bye in week freaking 14. What I don't freaking understand is, okay, one thing I do understand is the NFL not wanting to have bye weeks on Thanksgiving because you have 3 games on Thanksgiving and you want to have a full slate on Sunday. What the hell is up with the other 2 weeks of the year where you have 2 teams only on bye? You can put 2 more on each of those weeks and we wouldn't have this dang problem. It just needs to be 8 weeks of byes with 4 teams apiece. Call it even. Call it a day. Otherwise, you got all this BS going on. I understand they don't care. They say they don't care about fantasy football, and I get it. But if it wasn't for fantasy football, the amount of money that fantasy football brings in, just the eyeballs and all that jazz, for God's sakes, there's tournaments like Scott Fishbowl and the Warrior Bowl, which I'm still in the playoffs for barely, and I got Terry McLaurin on my Warrior Bowl team, and I need him to play. This is absolutely BS, and they need to stop this. And I heard rumors that they are planning on stopping this soon, but I've heard that they're going to stop. Roger Goodell's going to do other stuff. I mean, for God's sakes, they can't even figure out if they want to use turf or grass. I mean, next year the Jets are putting new turf in and not even using grass. And I guarantee you, the doc would say that grass is better than turf for people's bodies.
Oh, without question.
And
you don't have to be a doctor.
They can't even agree on that. So how can you not even agree on a schedule? Mike's rant of the day.
I love it. I think it's so interesting that they talk about that, and I get it, because it's like these are the players, especially. It's like they're out there, they're sacrificing their bodies, they're playing hurt, they're giving their all, and they're sacrificing some of the best years of their lives, and then people come at them on social media and at the games like, oh, I need 14 points from you. It's like, well, hey, I'm a human being. It's like I got problems too, but the idea that the NFL doesn't care about fantasy football is ludicrous to me, because I know they care about their $4 billion, billion with a B, that they make every year. And fantasy football is a big part of that. So it's like, okay, like you don't necessarily have to cater to the whims of the fantasy football player, but don't spit in their faces either.
For God's sakes, this is what I said this the other day on the Rum Boys Network. I was talking to Robbie, and I said, if they didn't care about fantasy football, they wouldn't have hired people that are in our circle to be NFL researchers.
Absolutely. And they wouldn't market it to us, and they wouldn't invest in DraftKings, and they wouldn't invest in FanDuel, and they wouldn't do lots of this stuff. But here we are. Yeah. So yeah, it's a legitimate beef. It's a good rant.
Yeah, definitely.
So it is time for the cheat of the week. So waiver wire. I know Doc mentioned it a little bit, but Jordan, what's your cheat of the week, bud?
Man, after Doc broke it down, I don't know if I should even recommend these two guys. Actually,
that's why I wanted to go. I wanted to do that first before I went to right. And I was like, I don't know. I know Jordan's
going. Might have to be Tony Jones instead, or Wayne Gallman.
Go for Tony Jones.
Yeah. But no, I had DJ Dallas and Travis Homer on there. Obviously because of Ken Walker's injury, but like Doc mentioned, DJ Dallas is possibly dealing with a high ankle sprain, so obviously he would be kind of disqualified from even guys wanting to put a claim in on him, because that's at least a 4-week sometimes.
Yeah, 4 to 5 weeks kind of minimum, and then sometimes not even that. It can be worse. They could need surgery. We saw it with Michael Thomas a couple of years ago. So a really, really bad injury.
Yeah,
Michael Thomas still isn't playing.
This is
right.
Probably the first time in show history that two cheats of the week got disqualified before the show was over.
Yeah.
I apologize for that.
No, that was great insight. So I'd say I don't even know if I want to see Hawks running back now, because it could be at the minimum three guys in a mix if Homer is healthy enough to play, and then you got the two guys that they have in Jones and Gallman, and who's to say that Ken Walker won't play this week? So
exactly.
It's hard.
Exactly.
Now that you broke that down, Doc, and I'm rethinking it. No, don't stay away from the Seahawks guys if you can.
Yeah, I think it's just something you got to watch the practice reports, and we don't know. So it's like if you're in a spot where you got to throw a dart, that's all you're doing. You're throwing a dart. If it hits, you got a 20% chance hitting the bullseye. But otherwise, we talk about this on the Monday night show, and we go over all the injuries of the week. We kind of, break down the important ones, and then at the end, I kind of rapid fire through the last 5-6 minutes of just everybody else. But it's like sometimes with these things, like the information that we have on Thursday and Friday is not the same information we have on Monday and Tuesday. Right. So the picture may become a little bit more clear, as the week goes on, and we see that guys aren't practicing, or, they're limited, or they're going for more imaging, or more information comes out, or Pete Carroll invents a new injury or a new term that he wants to share with the rest of the world. And I love Pete Carroll. He's fantastic. But that's kind of where we're at. So I think it's something that some of these things you just got to watch. And, if you have daily waivers, or, you're in a fastest finger league or something like that, like news breaks, you got to be ready to pounce, because everybody else in the league is doing the same thing. So sometimes you just got to be quick on the trigger. But if you have them on the radar and you're thinking about it, and then you get some news, you're like, okay, I can act on that really quickly. And I think
So
that's
you don't think any of those guys is somebody that people would need to put a claim in tonight for?
I think you can, but I think maybe the claims are better spent elsewhere. And then it's something where it's like, it might be something similar to what happened with the Jets last week. Because I was listening to another show today, and they were saying that Zonovan Knight is only claimed in like 54% of sleeper leagues, which sounded low to me. And then, they talked about it some more. It was actually on the Fantasy Pros Network, so give credit to them. They said that what the thought process was is people kind of got spooked at the end of the week, and the water got muddied a little bit, and nobody picked up anybody. So that happened, and Zonovan Knight went out and had a great game. So it's like, if you kind of were like, I'm going to put my chips on Zonovan Knight, hey, you won. If you put your chips on, Ty Johnson, like, you did all right. If not, if you said, hey, I'm not interested and I'm going to move on, then maybe you pick somebody else up. So that's kind of the way to look at it. Just to expand on that really quickly, one guy that I would look at, because this is backup season. This is times where it's like, if your running back goes down at an inopportune time, especially with all these bye weeks, but as the playoffs come up, that can be a team killer. You can have a 12-1 team, 13-1. You got a bye week, and then week 14, your guys go out and you lose your top 2 running backs, and you're scrambling. And now all that hard work that you just put in for 3 months all goes down the drain. And we don't want to see that happen to you. So this is the time, if you have a spot on your bench, if you got to buy, if week 14 doesn't matter to you because you already locked up a playoff spot, great. So what do? Look for backup running backs that are out there on waivers. Samaje Perine 2 weeks ago, nobody cared about him until Joe Mixon got hurt, and then he probably led people to the playoffs, putting up 40-something fantasy points over the last 2 weeks. And he may be more involved going forward. Another guy that I'm thinking about, Joshua Kelly. So he's the guy that's really stepped up. And if something happens to Austin Eckler, God forbid, he's going to be the guy to benefit. So look at it's very league dependent. Just go out there and look at the guys, the next man up, the guy that could have a bigger role if somebody gets hurt, like we talked about with Fournette and Rashad White. If this happens, who benefits? And can I sneak 1 or 2 of those guys on the roster? It may not make a difference, but you may end up holding a scratch-off lottery ticket, and it could take you to a championship. So that's what I wanted to kind of throw out there.
No, I mean the Joshua Kelly one's a perfect one. Before I give my cheat of the week, let's answer this one, and I will start off real quick, and then I'll throw it to you guys. Zonovan Knight, Latavius Murray, Rashad White, rank them. Thanks. To me, I'm going. Oh, geez. Rashad White, Latavius Murray, Zonovan Knight.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say that only because we don't know how long Carter will be out. But
Yep.
if Carter was out for more time, I would go Knight second.
Yeah, Kyle's right. Are you looking for season long, or are you looking for this week only? Because season long for sure, 1 week might change a little bit, but I mean, I kind of think it's the same either way. But like you said, Jordan, you don't know about Michael Carter.
I think I agree with you guys. I think it's Rashad White, number 1, just because he's got value this week. He'll probably have value for the rest of the year. Zonovan Knight could have some value this week. We don't know how long that's going to last. And then Latavius Murray, it's like, I mean, yeah. I mean, he's not horrible. Like he's out there. He's a body. He's getting carries. God bless him. But I'd rather have the other 2 guys over him.
Yeah. And speaking of the Jets, and speaking of what Jordan brought up earlier about Mike White bringing the rest of the team to relevancy, go to Going for Two. If you haven't yet, go to goingfor2.com. Check out the waiver wire article. The guy I wrote up in the waiver article is the guy I'm going to bring up tonight, and that is Corey Davis. And if you asked me if I would have been writing up Corey Davis or even talking about Corey Davis, if you would have asked me in week 1 or 2, I would have told you you're absolutely crazy, because I personally thought he was going to be the odd man out of this offense completely, even though I was one of those guys that did think Zach Wilson was going to be decent. I thought it was going to be Elijah Moore, Conklin, and Wilson, and Berrios, and not Davis. But I was wrong. The thing that I like about Corey Davis, in the past 2 weeks, I know I'm only giving small sample, but with White coming in and changing of the offense, that's why I'm only going back a few weeks. He has had 68. He had 68% snap share 2 weeks ago, and then this past week he had 81%, second most besides Garrett Wilson. He had 5 catches this week. He only had 1 last week, but he had 5 catches this week. It's going up. Here's the reason I am intrigued on Corey Davis. He can be a third. He can be a WR3 for you, a flex, whatever. Like Doc has brought up earlier today, and we've all talked about it the last couple weeks. Playoffs are coming up, but the biggest thing with the playoffs coming up is injuries. The injuries bug is, I mean, Doc, I'm not sure how long you've been doing this, but wouldn't you say this is probably the worst injury bug in a while?
No, I wouldn't. And the only reason I'll say that is like last year felt like injury worse. Armageddon. And the reason was like players were getting injured, but right around this time last year, like, you know, the whole world got COVID and like half the NFL, it was like, he's testing, he's positive, he's not positive. Oh, he's sick. Now he's feeling sick. Now he's out. It was like, for me, every hour I was getting like these notifications like this guy's out, this guy's out, this guy's out. Okay, who's the backup? Who's the third? Who's the third guy? Who's the fourth guy? So it doesn't feel like that, but it has been bad. And this is not the time where you want to have bad injuries because, like we talked about, that can derail all the hard work that you put in. And we see guys rightfully upset about it every year. It's like my team was 14-0, it was 13-1, it was 12-2. I had a bye. I lose the first round coming out of the bye. It sucks. You just need to have one bad week and it's over.
Yeah. So the other reason I bring this up about him in general is this week they play the Bills. So week 14, they play the Bills. He's probably not going to do great, but he could, sneak something in. But for the fantasy playoffs, his matchups are the Detroit Lions, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Seattle Seahawks. I don't know if you guys have been watching football, but the Lions have been doing decent, but they haven't given up points. And I would love to have him get me some points against the Lions. We know the Jaguars are the Jaguars, and I was wrong about the Jaguars because, Doc, in our bold prediction show, my bold prediction was that the Jaguars were going to win the division.
I watched that show, by the way.
I was wrong.
I watched that show.
I was wrong. However, my thing is I'm not going to call it a bold prediction and then say freaking Zeke Elliott is going to be the number 1 running back for the Dallas
I think
Cowboys.
If memory serves me, you did say that you really liked Trevor Lawrence and liked him to have a bounce back thing. So it's like, you kind of,
hey,
you got that
I said
right.
Goff was going to have a bounce back year and finish in the top 15.
Well, I mean, he's doing pretty good. He's not that far
17.
Off, right?
He's 17 or 18 right now. He's close. He's almost there. But yeah, so Corey Davis is my cheat of the week. We've had a great show. I'll throw it around the horn. Doc, it was great to have you. Plug whatever you want. Go ahead, bud.
All right. Well, this was a lot of fun, guys. It was nice to get the invite and to be on here and be able to sub in. Hopefully everything's good with Jamie and he'll be back soon. But really, thank you guys for having me on. Thanks to the audience for watching. Some of the stuff that I do, I'm one of the injury analysts. I don't know if I'm the injury analyst, but I am an injury analyst for Going for Two. And I'm a co-host of the Monday Night Football pregame show on Monday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So it's myself, Gladys Louise Tyler, Kyle Senra, and Dan the B-League Rosia, and we talk about the Monday night preview. We talk about all the injuries for the week and whatever else is going on at the time. And for those of you that are interested in injury analysis, I actually have a book out that I wrote for fantasy football players to kind of take the medical component of it and try to condense about 4 years of medical school and 15 years of medical career into about 100 pages of a book. Because sometimes Twitter isn't active and you got to make your own decisions. All the people that, give you injury advice, like they're just not available to you. So how to formulate your own process, your own framework, and kind of read between the lines of coach speak, player speak, and media outlets for your fantasy teams. That book is called Injuries Suck, but Your Fantasy Team Doesn't Have to. It's available on Amazon. The audiobook will be coming out in the new year. And there's a link for it on my Twitter page at TFSDoc. So I love hearing from the audience and getting questions and getting feedback. So always open for that. And just once again, want to say thank you, Jordan and Mike. This has been a really great pleasure. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem, Doc. Jordan, take it away.
Obviously, you guys can catch me here every Tuesday, Fantasy Cheat Sheet. Every week, article on goingfor2.com, cut them or keep them, winding down with that as the season draws to a close. But yeah, just looking forward to next week, getting ready for the playoffs.
Yeah, for sure. And Kyle out here getting ready to pull up the book, even though he's not even on camera. I love it, Kyle. Dedication, Kyle.
Those guys are so great. Like whenever we talk about it on the show, they have it on their bookshelf and they kind of pull it up and hold it up in front of the camera. It's fantastic.
Yeah, so you can find me. I dropped the Mike FF on the Twitter machine. You can find me here on Tuesday nights at the Fantasy Cheat Sheet with Jordan and Jamie. Normally, I know Jamie's not feeling well, but hopefully you get better, bud. You can also find me over at the Rum Boys Fantasy Network. But the other thing I want to bring up, and we were talking about it before, tomorrow is the 300th episode of the Armchair Fantasy Show, which is the main show for the Going for Two live network, hosted by the owner and founder of Going for Two, Jeff Lambert. I will be the guest tomorrow. I forgot that it was the 300th episode until they reminded me today. So hopefully I don't screw it up. And then next week, we got our good boy, the Doc, next week too. So for everyone, it was a great show. Have a nice night, everyone. For Doc, for Jordan, I'm Mike. Peace out.